Hello people and welcome back. Apologies for there being no video last week. For the life of me, I could not think about what to film last week. I was racking my brains all week and then it came to the weekend and I realised before I started YouTube I had a whole bunch of sort of generic video ideas written down, and so I just went back to my drawing board. However, during the weekend I couldn't film it because I had my nephews with me and there's no way I'd be able to film a video without the rackets in the background because they are two very energetic boys. So I just decided to skip last week's upload. Now, I'm not feeling that great. I know I mentioned in my last video that I wasn't feeling well. This time it's a different kind of not feeling well. For some reason I just can't seem to catch my breath, and I talk very fast anyway, but I don't want to be going like on camera, so there's probably going to be a lot of cuts where I stopped to catch my breath because otherwise I'm probably going to pass out. So I'm going to be talking about my favourite poem from Rupi Kaur. Rupi Kaur is a poet and she is what people like to call an Insta poet because she's quite famous on Instagram, and I guess people really know her because of Instagram, and that's how she became very popular. I had the absolute privilege of seeing her perform last month, so that was in March, and she was spectacular. At first when she started I was a bit like, oh, I'm not sure if I like this. The simple reason I thought I wasn't sure if I liked it was because she started off reading some of her poems that are really short. Now, I feel like some of her poems aren't meant to be read out loud, and because I'm used to going to spoken word stuff. Now, there's no shade here. I think spoken word poets are just as good as poets. They are poets, in fact, but usually they read a lot of longer pieces, so there's a flow to it, there's a huge sort of story around whatever they're performing, whereas she just performed loads of little small pieces. So at first I was a bit like, oh, but then she really got into it. She performed some of her longer pieces. She read a lot of them from her book. There are a lot of poems in there, so understandably she doesn't memorise them all, but she memorised pieces and then had backing tracks to them, and it was so good. She's so witty, she's so funny, she's so lovely. So I'm going to talk about my favourite poems from her. At first I was going to make this video a top 5 favourite poems. However, I have more than 5 favourite poems. I think I have 10, so I'm just going to run through those. I like a lot of her poems just because I relate to them on a personal level. Actually, speaking on that, I know a lot of people don't like Rupi Kaur because, and other poets that they like to call Insta poets, because they don't throw in all these metaphors and similes into their poems, and therefore they're diluting poetry and things like that. I used to read quite a lot of poetry when I was a teenager, stuff from Plath, stuff from Keating, all those famous poets, that we all know and love. And I still love poets like Rupi Kaur because she makes things simple and she makes poetry accessible to people who don't have this high level education and have studied literature and all these sort of things. If she makes poetry accessible to them, I think that's perfectly fine. For me, poetry is about being relatable and you being able to understand something. And sometimes all these complicated poems, where it's all metaphors and similes, not everyone understands them or even enjoys them, and it's not because they're dumb. So for me, I'm just I like her. She's a breath of fresh air for me. I feel like if it gets people reading more, then I'm not against that in any way, shape or form. I'm going to try and film this video as quickly as I can because there are people out there making a lot of noise and my camera always seems to pick them up. I really should just get a microphone. For example, I do have a microphone, I just need to fix it. But anyway, so Milk and Honey is Rupi Kaur's first collection of poetry. She also released another one last year which is called The Sun and Her Flowers. When she performed from this book and also The Sun and Her Flowers. And like I said before, she was absolutely brilliant. Absolutely love seeing her, so funny. And also the outfits she wore were really, really great. If you see the different outfits she wore during her UK tour, just stunning, and the photography again also stunning. So I'm going to read the back of the book because it actually breaks down how the book is laid out, and then I'm going to go in to talk about the poems that I like. This is a journey of surviving through poetry. This is the blood, sweat, tears of 21 years. This is my heart in your hands. This is the hurting, the loving, the breaking, the healing. So the way this book is written is it's broken down into 4 parts, and it's broken down into the hurting, the loving, the breaking and the healing. The first poem that I absolutely love is a really short one. A lot of her poems don't actually have titles, and I actually get why she does this because when I used to write poetry, I feel like one of the hardest things of writing a poem is finding a title for it, a title that encapsulates what you're talking about. So before, when I used to write poetry, I just call it number 1, number 2. And then I would roll with it like that. So the first poem doesn't have a name. And it's simply, I'm going to read out the shorter ones, like I said. I mean, I don't have a voice for spoken word poetry, and she's obviously trained herself to read her poetry in a certain way, but I'm just going to give it a stab. It's just words. So, a daughter should not have to beg her father for a relationship. I mean, this is the most simple thing ever. I know it's not mind-blowing, you're probably thinking, what? But I think for anyone that has a difficult relationship with their father or their parents, they're really going to relate to this. And for me, I just do, like, relate to this. And for me, it sort of reminds me that this is true. Not because she says it's true, but it's something I've always thought, but I read it and I'm just like, yes, like, in this, I am the child, and that is my father, and I should not have to beg him for a relationship. So yeah, might get a bit deep and personal in some of these videos, but yeah. It's a really simple one, but like I said in the beginning of the video, for me poetry is about like seeing yourself in that poem, you know, like recognising yourself, sort of resonating with it, having all the feels from it, and that's what I get from just this little snippet. And yeah, love it. So this poem is from page 28. The next poem that I'm going to talk about is from page 29. And again, it's a really short one, so I'm just going to read it. Trying to convince myself I'm allowed to take up space is like writing with my left hand when I was born to use my right. The idea of shrinking is hereditary. And that's the title of the poem, The Idea of Shrinking. I really just like this poem because I really, really relate to it. And it's bad that I relate to it. Not bad, but I feel like a lot of people feel this way. But I think like myself, if you have like low self-esteem or you're quite an introvert, you're really used to the idea of like, you know, being invisible, making yourself as invisible as you can, and you feel like what you have to say is not important enough, and unlearning those habits that you've built up through a lifetime is really, really hard. And that's exactly what she's saying in this poem. It's not mind-blowing, but I feel like for anyone who does see themselves that way will read this, and if they haven't got to that point where they think, actually, I need to do more about this, they might read this and be like, actually, yeah, like I need to stand up for myself a bit more. I need to be like more comfortable in who I am. The next poem that I'm going to talk about is from The Loving. So those first two poems were from the section The Hurting. So she just breaks it up with these black dividers, and they usually just say the loving, the healing, the hurting. What's the other one? The breaking. So yeah, the next favourite of mine is from page 45. And I'm not going to read this poem out because it is a little bit of a long one, but the long and short of it is her dad telling her about her mum's stomach because her mum is pregnant, and just saying that it's basically a miracle that her mum carries a new life inside of her. And I think just in this day and age when we're bombarded with like so many comments from men that, you know, negative comments from men about women and just sort of being really hateful towards women, I think it's so important that something like this exists. And that I know it's really, what I'm going to say sounds really shitty because I know there are nice men out there and not all men are trash, but it's really nice that a man can recognise that about a woman. And I know there are probably loads of men that do recognise that about a woman, so to say that just sounds so bad, but it's just nice to see that written down in paper form, especially when you're bombarded with so many negative comments. The one bit that I will read is this bit because I think this really encapsulates why this poem is so good, or at least why I think this poem is so good. My father scoots me into his tree trunk arms and said the closest thing to God on this earth is a woman's body. It's where life comes from. And to have a grown man tell me something so powerful at such a young age changed me to see the entire universe rested at my mother's feet. I just think it's so beautiful. One thing I will point out, and it has been said about Rupi Kaur's poem, is the lack of punctuation in it. It does make it hard to read, especially like if you're reading it out loud on camera for the first time. I'm just like, oh, there's no comma here and this means something different. But obviously she writes in the way that she writes, that's her own personal style. But yeah, this poem is just so beautiful. I mean, how lovely is one, what her dad said, but also the way she framed it. And I think it's just lovely to see that sort of miracle of childbirth celebrated, of pregnancy celebrated. The next poem is my absolute favourite. I'm not going to read this poem just because it's a decent sized length for a poem, but it's not one of the short ones. But it's my absolute favourite, and she did perform this one. The basic gist of this poem is her saying that she doesn't want to have someone come along and complete her. She wants to be whole in herself, and then together the both of them can build an empire. And for me, that's just what I'm about. When I was younger, it really was about like, oh my god, who's going to come and fix all these broken things in me? Who's going to come and save me? But those are the messages you're bombarded with. But as I've grown older, I'm just like, no, I want to be like working on myself and be happy with myself and have someone else who also is really like focused on, you know, developing themselves, being the best that they can be, or, you know, is there. Basically, I'm not looking for someone to like come and, you know, save me and heal me and things like that. And yeah, together I want to be building a pretty large empire. But yeah, I just like this. It's also worth noting that she has illustrations throughout these books. The next one, again, is a really short one, very simple. It goes, "You look like you smell of honey and no pain. Let me have a taste of that." I just really relate to this poem a lot. There's nothing special about it, but I feel like if you're the kind of person who has been through a lot in life, you sometimes come across people who just are so wonderful that they have an energy about them that nothing traumatic has really happened to them, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, there's no shade being thrown here. But like it says, like, you just look like something sweet and something that doesn't hurt. But yeah, another reason I like it is just it's really simple and short, straight to the point. There's no complicated metaphors in here. You can understand this. The next piece is from the section The Breaking, so that's the third section in the book. And again, it's a decent sized length poem. The basic gist of the poem is her explaining that her emotions are not balanced, I guess. Like she says, when she's angry, she's angry. And there's like a last bit, she's like, here, I don't grieve, I shatter. I guess it's just talking about the sort of spectrum of emotions and how far her ones go. The reason why I really like this poem is because I resonate with it, and I know like a lot of my friends also do as well, that when something happens, like, it's not just like, oh, okay, we're dealing with it on this spectrum. Things get blown up, and it's just like, sometimes some people don't know how to handle their emotions. I'm definitely one of those people. Things definitely become overwhelming. And instead of it just affecting me a little bit, it affects me a lot. But I really have tried to combat that over the years with the whole thing that they say, like, will this matter in 5 minutes? Will this matter in 5 days? For me personally, I don't think a lot of things are going to matter in 5 years. So saying, will this matter in 5 years? Well, no, a lot of things aren't going to matter in 5 years, even the things you're happy about now. So it's about stepping outside of your emotions and sort of looking at things, looking at the bigger picture. But yeah, I really do like this poem because I relate to it. The next piece is on page 140 to page 141, and it's more of a prose piece, and it's called Selfish, and it's just basically about lovers who may come into your life who are actually quite selfish people, who do not want you, in the sense that they do not see something long term with you, but they see something about you that they really want, and they want to try that, and therefore they, you know, embark on this journey with you, but they never had any intention of staying. And if you've ever been in a situation like that, you'll know. And yeah, for me, it's just a really sort of powerful but painful piece, and you can just tell there's a lot of heartbreak in this, and if you've ever been in that situation, you also know what it feels like. The next set of poems I'm going to be talking about is from the last bit of the book, and that's called The Healing. So this poem is actually really, really short, and it simply goes, "Perhaps I don't deserve nice things because I'm paying for the sins I don't remember." I actually don't relate to this anymore, but I know it's something that younger me would have loved, and yeah, I just used to feel that I was being punished for a lot of things in life, and I was just like, maybe I've just been really bad in a past life. And I know a lot of us throw that out a lot of the time when bad things happen. So I know a lot of people do relate to this, but you know, I've tried to flip it on the other side and think in a more positive way. But yeah, sometimes life does really feel like that, that actually you're being punished for something. You're just like, what have I done to deserve all of this? But I mean, you probably will never know, so there's no point worrying about it. But I just think it's a nice small piece, and it's also, again, I keep saying this, but it's nice to see that someone else feels this way. It's worth noting that I also found out, it's either from, I think it's at the back of her book, or, you know, something that I've read about her. A lot of the poems she writes aren't based on her experiences. Some of them are based on her friends' experiences. So you do read a lot of things to do with like sexual abuse and rape, and I don't think those are from her own I don't think those are from her own personal experiences. I could be wrong, but I know she does say that not all the things she talks about are from her point of view. The next poem is on page 154, and again, this is a poem that talks about relationships, but again, it's that sort of thing of depending on someone, being like codependent on someone, and it's like, no, you don't need to believe that you need to depend on someone. You need someone who's going to compliment you. That's the long and short of the poem. It's really good to have sort of empowering messages like this that just say, someone else isn't going to come along and like complete you. Stop depending on other people and like be good in yourself, and then find someone who's really going to complement that. And I just feel like that's all anyone needs when it comes to like relationship advice. Obviously there's a lot more that goes into it, but it should be the basis, because that's where a lot of relationships struggle, when you're looking for someone who's going to make you feel 100 times better, and that person more than likely is not complete in themselves. They're also working on themselves. They've not got time to be fixing you. So yeah, that's a piece that I definitely like. I just like a lot of these pieces that are just sort of reinforcing the self-love, because it's just a really important message, and not everyone is going to get that from their family, not everyone's going to get that from their friends. So if things like that are if things like this are more popular in mainstream like media, social media, then I'm all for it because it's going to help someone. I feel like the next poem really resonates with a lot of women because I don't think there's any age limit that, you know, men or like a lover stopped influencing you. But in this case, she is talking about a boy. And I just want to read it out. It's really short. It says, "The next time he points out that the hair on your legs is growing back, remind that boy your body is not his home. He is a guest. Warn him to never outstep his welcome again." She actually read this when she performed, I remember, because everyone was like, woo! And it's true, like, it's one of those empowering poems. I've never had that happen to me, but, you know, I know there's probably guys out there who do say that to women, but it's, at the end of the day, it's true. This is your body, this is not society's body, this is not his body, like, you're a guest here, so don't you dare be trying to point out any sort of flaws in my body, whatever. If there are going to be hair growing out my legs, it's because I've had stuff to do, and I haven't had time to shave my legs. But again, poems like this, messages like this is the kind of empowering stuff that women need to be growing up on. Just so you know that this is your body, you know? No one else can tell you anything else. So I have now come to the final poem that I'm going to talk about. So this is actually poem number 11. So when I said 10, I might have been telling a little fib, but 11, there's not that much difference. This is something that I feel like I really relate to. I know a lot of my friends relate to because it's just like, what else can you do? So it's a really simple one and it's called There's Nothing Purer Than That. The world gives you so much pain and here you are making gold out of it. I think so many of us probably know a lot of people who have been through so many awful things, but they are making good stuff out of it. When you don't allow life to just drag you down, sometimes you can make the best out of a really horrible situation. Because I remember when I was younger, we had this, me and my friend had this discussion. It was someone's parent that said it to us, and they were just like, if you don't laugh, you'll cry. And I know that sounds so simple and silly, but it literally was like a little bit of a motto for things. Because it was just like, could sit here and cry about this situation all day long, but actually I'm going to flip it on its head, I'm going to laugh and carry on, because as great as crying is, it's a really good release. It's not everyday cry, like, you will hold yourself back, and ultimately the people who did awful things to you will still be moving on. So yeah, it's better to take, it sounds so cliche, but it's better to take that pain and sort of make something good out of it if you can. If not, just leave it in the past. But yeah, so that is the end of all my sort of favourite poems from Rupi Kaur. I hope this video was enjoyable. I know it's just me like reading some poems out. I hope I can put some of the poems on the screen. If not, you can always find her poems like all across the internet. I definitely know I have a whole bunch that I've posted on my Twitter, and I post them like on my Instagram as well. I'm definitely going to follow up with doing a video on the sun and her flowers. I just thought it would be a bit too long in one video. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!